11 spine-chilling tales revealed, sinister hauntings that transform the night into cursed terror. The shadows loomed like dark whispers across the street, threatening to swallow the small, peeling houses of the fading suburb. Alone in her home, Helen's heart raced as dread coiled around her, wrapping tighter with every late-night shift she faced. Ahead of her lay the diner, the flickering neon sign a beacon of temporary escape. But as the wind howled outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister had settled over their quaint little neighborhood. Dinner for the kids was just about ready when Sophie burst into tears, her tiny face twisted with fear. "Mommy! The dark man is out there." Helen's heart dropped. She sighed and knelt beside her 8-year-old, trying to brush the fear away with soothing words. "Sweetheart, it's just a story. You know that." But inside, unease gnawed at her. The flickering porch light cast jagged shadows, making the front yard feel like a stage set for dread. It was silly child's imagination, but what if it wasn't? No sooner had she calmed Sophie than her phone buzzed, a notification about yet another missing pet. Helen rolled her eyes, dismissing it. It seemed every night there was a new pet claimed by the dark. But something settled in her gut then. The neighbors, once friendly faces in the evenings, cast tight-lipped glances her way now, as if a shared horror gripped them tightly. Whispers floated like ghosts through the thin walls, rumors of loss and fear creeping around the edges of casual conversations. Later, as Helen stood at the sink scrubbing dishes, she glanced out the window. Her heart jolted. She thought she caught a glimpse of movement under the same tree. Sophie pointed to the one that seemed to loom larger with every passing night. Was it the dark man? She shook her head, trying to dispel the creeping certainty that clawed at her mind. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. That night, just as she tucked Ben into bed, Sophie recounted another harrowing tale about the dark man. "He watches me from the shadows, Mommy. I swear he wants to come inside." Chills spiraled down Helen's spine. The tales felt increasingly vivid, unnervingly real. What was once a playful imagination now held the weight of something darker. In hushed tones, older residents whispered about children who had vanished here decades ago, their laughter and cries echoing in the fog of forgetfulness. Of fear that lived somewhere in the bones of the town. The air thickened around her, suffocating, as Helen cast her mind back to the toys scattered in their yard, a doll half buried in dead grass. Were they playing the same game as the children who once ran through these crooked streets? Helplessness settled in her chest, but she pushed it away. She had to protect Sophie and Ben. They were relying on her strength, and yet, it felt like each evening was a countdown towards something inevitable. With trembling hands, Helen turned off the kitchen light and went to check on the kids once more, the house closing in around her as she moved. But as she entered the dim hallway, darkness pressed against her like a living thing. A shiver ran down her spine as she caught the faintest sound, footsteps, echoing softly just beyond the door. Heart racing, she bolted over, locking the door and peering through the window. Darkness swallowed the yard, the light barely reaching the edges. The haunting thought did not fade. What if he had already crept inside? Fear gripped her, making her frozen in place. She reached for her phone, ready to call for help, but the lights overhead flickered ominously, plunging her into a suffocating darkness that whispered of horrors yet to come. The question clung in the air: what awaited her beyond the safety of their walls? Helen's breath hitched, the silence thick as fog around her. The ticking clock on the wall felt like a countdown to doom. Every second stretched endlessly. The footsteps outside had stopped, but that only deepened her dread. She wrestled with her thoughts. Was it just wind playing tricks, or was there truly something lurking? The chilling air seemed to whisper secrets. She placed a trembling hand against the window, peering out into the darkened yard. The tree stood firm, but where she once thought she saw movement, now it was just shadows. Just her imagination, she told herself, but the darkness beyond felt too alive, too aware. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed from the back door, making her jump. Panic coursed through her veins as she whirled around, her heart pounding like a war drum. She grabbed a kitchen knife, its blade glinting faintly in the faint light from the window. What had made that sound? Another thud resounded, louder this time, followed by an ominous scraping, like nails against wood. The noise clawed its way up her spine, sending icy chills through her. "Mommy?" Sophie's small voice piped up from the bedroom, delicate and still fragile with sleep. "Stay in your room," Helen hissed, her voice trembling as she backed away toward the living room. She needed to keep her children safe, they were all she had. But dread twisted in her gut with each step. The scraping grew louder, more urgent, as though something was inching closer. Helen felt a tear slip down her cheek, drawn by the instinct to protect her children. Panic bubbled within her as she glanced at the clock. 11:11 p.m., the witching hour, when restless spirits roamed. And then she remembered those whispers in the neighborhood about the dark man, his ability to weave into the very fabric of night. She could almost hear them now, echoing in her mind. What if Sophie was right? What if there truly was something waiting just beyond the door? A sudden crash split the air, the back door had given way. The soft creak of hinges was deafening. Helen's heart raced as she moved toward the hallway, the grip on the knife now slick with sweat. Tension coiled tightly around her throat. "Mommy. Please." Ben's tiny voice cracked from the other room, a sound of pure terror that shattered her resolve. Then she saw it, a shadow, thick and shifting, creeping toward the kids' room. The outline was wrong, unnatural, a melding of darkness too deep to comprehend. She pressed herself against the wall, fear clawing at her throat, her mind racing to calculate her next move. Should she confront it? Hide? But hadn't the whispers mentioned something about fear being the dark man's favorite meal? She could feel its presence now, crawling closer like a predator closing in on its prey. Her breath became shallow, panic flooding her senses. With a swift intake of breath, she stilled her shaking hands. She'd face it. For Sophie. For Ben. The door to the kids' room creaked silently open as she stepped towards it, ready to pounce on whatever nightmarish vision awaited. Helen braced herself for the confrontation, her heart thundering in her ears, but as she reached the threshold, she stopped cold. Sophie and Ben were gone. The room lay empty, their toys quiet in the thin light. Darkness pooled in the corners like spilled ink. Where were they? Despair gripped her. The realization hit her with all the force of a freight train. Had the dark man taken them? What if he'd been watching all along? Just then, a soft giggle erupted from the darkness, pulling her back. It was a chilling sound, the kind that made her heart drop. Before she could formulate a plan, a voice whispered from the shadowy recesses, delicate yet sharp like glass. "Mommy, come play with us." Each syllable slithered down her spine, deepening the horror. She took a step back, desperation leaping through her veins. What would happen next? The laughter echoed again, followed by a renewed rustle. She took another step back, a chill of bone-deep terror settling over her. But then something in her flickered with a new determination. What if she could save them? What if she could confront the darkness? As the shadows peeled away, revealing a path into the unknown, one thought consumed her: what was waiting for her in that abyss? Helen's heart raced as she stood there, teetering on the edge of dread and resolution. The darkness flickered with a life of its own, taunting her with sinister whispers. "Mommy, come play with us." The voice felt closer now, twisting her insides into knots, a false promise laced in malice. With a quick look back at the empty room, she dashed into the shadows, fear and determination battling inside her. The laughter followed her, a chilling echo wrapping around her like a shroud. She crept down the hallway, each creak of the floorboards beneath her feet sounded like a death knell, a dirge for the light of day. Ben? Sophie? She called out, her voice faltering, barely a breath beyond a whisper. Silence swallowed her words. The living room loomed ahead, drenched in shadows. The soft glow of her kitchen light spilled into the space, illuminating the edges of furniture that seemed to twist and stretch into grotesque forms. Helen's eyes darted around, scanning for any signs of her children. "Play with us, Mommy," the voice beckoned again, a blend of her children's laughter and something darkly sinister. It seemed to seep from everywhere at once, pooling in the corners, pulling her deeper into this nightmare. She clutched the knife tighter, feeling its cold metal as a tether to sanity. What if she was too late? What if they were lost to the dark man forever? Each thought hurt like a knife wound. The kitchen felt like a sanctuary, yet the shadows crawled forth, eager to consume her resolve. Helen edged toward the doorway, where the darkness felt thicker, more oppressive. She hesitated, swallowed by doubt. But she couldn't let fear dictate her actions anymore. She had to try. Taking a deep breath, she crossed the threshold. The light flickered above, casting eerie shapes that danced across the walls. She glanced at the familiar space, now warped, tinged with a sense of foreboding. In the corner of the kitchen, just beyond an old oak table, something shifted. Panic rose, her heart thumping violently against her chest. "Sophie? Ben?" She called again, louder this time, galvanizing herself against the creeping dread. The last echoes of her voice faded into silence, thick and suffocating. She rounded the table, and the shadows twisted, revealing a flicker of movement beneath the sink. Was it them? She stepped closer, knife raised, breath hitching in her throat. Suddenly, a barrage of whispers erupted from the darkness all around her, a cacophony of voices, a symphony of glee. "Come play with us, Mommy. Come play." Helen felt the cold chill of despair clawing at her heart. The voices grew louder, weaving insidiously through her mind, mixing with memories of her children's laughter. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows pulsing like a heartbeat. "Mommy! Help!" Ben's voice broke through her horror, raw and terrified. It was coming from outside, drawing her towards the back door. With a surge of adrenaline, she sprinted toward it, throwing the door open. Headlights from a car lit up the yard, a fleeting moment of hope. She squinted into the bright beams, searching, desperate, but the yard was empty. "Where are you?" she screamed into the night, the shadows shifting around her like waves of dark water. The laughter behind her echoed, mocking, cruel. "You'll never find them, they're ours now." Helen's breath caught, a dawning horror creeping in. How could she face this malevolent force alone? Her heart screamed for her children, but each second felt like an eternity, stretching the thin thread of hope to its breaking point. A cold gust of wind blew through, extinguishing the lights in a heartbeat. Panic surged within her again as darkness enveloped her. Alone. Now she was truly alone, but then she felt it a tug on her mind, a whisper pulling her toward the edge of the abyss, where she could feel their presence, the soft glow of their spirit mingling with shadows. Was it too late to save them? She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the whispers. The abyss spread before her like a mouth yawning wide, inviting her to take the final step. All that's left was a choice. Would she dive into the darkness in search of her children or succumb to the paralyzing fear that held her captive? As she hesitated at the threshold, her resolve hardened. One way or another, she would find them. With a new fear rising within her, Helen plunged forward into the shadowy depths, and the darkness welcomed her with an embrace that promised to unveil the terrible truths waiting within. What secrets did the dark man hold in that void? The darkness swallowed her whole, wrapping around her like a heavy blanket, stifling any last flickers of hope. Helen felt her body move, almost on autopilot, gliding through the inky blackness. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but the desperate cries of her children echoed in her ears. "Mommy! Help!" The air thickened, damp and sour, wrapping around her throat like a noose. Helen stumbled forward, desperate to grasp at something solid. She clenched the knife, now slick with the sweat of her grip. The darkness whispered taunts, their cruel words slithering through her mind. She was losing herself, but where were the kids? Suddenly, something ripped through the black, a faint glow. It flickered like a candle, illuminating the path just ahead. As she neared, her heart pulsed with recognition. Sophie? Ben! She shouted again, but the shadows swallowed her voice once more. In that fleeting light, an outline appeared. A figure stood across the room, small and curled into a ball. Terror clawed at Helen, but she had to go forward. Is that you? Please let it be them. When she reached the figure, a coldness swept over her. It was just a doll, its button eyes glimmering, mocking her. She swept the room with frantic eyes, each corner seeming to distort with shadowy hands reaching out, teasing her resolve. Not them, not like this. A rustling broke her from despair. Helen turned, her pulse racing again. In the vague glow, something darted past. Mommy! In here! Ben's voice sounded clearer, more present, pulling her toward a small alcove nestled beneath the stairs. Helen rushed forward, but her feet felt like lead. With each step, the whispering intensified. Join them, join us forever. The voices melded into a symphony of phantoms, clawing at her sanity with each syllable, drowning the cries of her children. Her heart pounded, blood pounding in her ears as she knelt in front of the alcove. Ben! Sophie! I'm coming! She shoved her hands into the gap, desperation defending against the cold grasp of all-consuming dread. A flash of movement sent shivers racing down her spine. Something was crouching in the alcove, a twisted silhouette glaring back at her with hollow eyes that glowed green in the dark. It let out a deep, guttural laugh, the sound slicing through her resolve. Welcome home, Mommy. It rasped, its voice layered with the echoes of her own children. Come play with us forever. Helen recoiled, choking back a scream. She swiped the blade, wildly swinging towards the grotesque figure. The knife made contact, but the creature merely laughed louder, a cacophony of delight ringing through the air, mocking her attempts to save her children. Search all you want. They're lost to the dark man. It cackled, a grotesque mirth that clawed at her insides. No! She shouted, fury igniting within her, fueling her next move. I want to lose them. Rising to her feet, she screamed for her children. The hollow figure began to vanish into the shadows, its laughing fading into grotesque echoes. You can't save them. They belong to the darkness now. A chill gripped Helen's heart. Where were they? Panic surged as a door creaked open in the distance. Faint light spilled through. Was there a way out? Or was it another trap? She hesitated, caught between the light and the endless abyss behind her. Ben! Sophie! She called again, pushing herself toward the glow, yearning for another chance, but would it lead to salvation or more lies? As she stood at the threshold, trapped in uncertainty, the whispers returned, more fervent than before. You have to choose. Mommy staring down the narrow pathway, she could almost visualize their faces, innocent and hopeful, waiting for her. Could she trust the light? Or was it just another deception from the dark man? Time pressed cruelly against her as she realized not all choices would lead to freedom. Would she step forward or retreat into darkness? The weight of the moment hung heavy, and every nerve in her body quivered as she contemplated her next move. Every beat of her heart echoed in the silence, a countdown to an unseen fate. Helen felt the whispers coil tighter around her, suffocating every rational thought. She glanced back into the suffocating darkness as if it were alive, crawling with hands that encircled her ankles, begging her to sink deeper. Behind her, the air crackled with malicious energy. Come back, Mommy. Ben's voice floated through the shadows, agonized and desperate, mixing with the laughter of the creature. We need you. But no, she wouldn't turn. Not like this. Not again. Taking a trembling breath, Helen stepped cautiously into the light. It surrounded her in warmth, a stark contrast to the chill dampening her skin. The sudden glow illuminated a hallway stretching far beyond her reach. Everything felt surreal, as if she had crossed into another world, one where the air tasted sweeter. "Stay close. I'm coming," she shouted, searching frantically for a sign of them. Each step echoed in the silence, leaving a sour taste in her mouth. As she moved forward, the light flickered, a threatening pulse. Shadows swirled at the edges, threatening to engulf her again. And then, she saw a door at the end of the hall. The wood was worn and cracked, the doorknob gleaming with an unsettling shine. Helen's instincts screamed at her. Was it the exit or another trap? Just as she was about to reach for the knob, a chilling laugh erupted from the shadows behind her. "You think you'll save them?" The voice dripped in mocking amusement. "You're too late." Her heart raced, the weight of dread pushing down on her. "I will not give up," she shouted back, desperate defiance lacing her words. She turned towards the sound, knife raised, ready for anything. But the shadows only deepened. No creature, no figure, just her with the knife glinting in the eerie glow. Then she heard them pitter-patter. Small feet running across the floor somewhere in the dark. The sound danced around her ears, sending panic surging anew. "Mommy! Over here! Ben! Sophie!" The voices sounded so close, but their origin twisted in the darkness, leading her deeper into uncertainty. Each frantic echo of her children amplified her desperation, drawing her away from the door. Just a little closer, the voice taunted again, echoing her fears. "You're almost there." Helen's breath hitched. Was this a trick? A sick game played by the dark man? She shut her eyes tight for a moment, centering herself against the chaos. "Stay strong," she whispered, feeling the heft of the knife in her palm. She could not let her fear control her. Opening her eyes, she turned back toward the door. There it loomed, almost calling to her. "Mommy!" Again, that sweet voice. "Ben? Sophie?" She could feel them. Their faces nestled deep within her mind, urging her forward. Power surged within her. She lunged toward the door, flinging it open with desperate urgency. Light flooded in, blinding her momentarily. But as she crossed the threshold, a cold hand clamped down on her shoulder, yanking her back. No, her voice was barely a whisper. The laughter returned, deep and echoing, filling her soul with dread. "You think you can escape? They're mine now." Helen gasped, the abyss of despair tearing a hole in her heart. She was caught, her children just out of reach, their screams swallowed by the darkness. Trapped again, she fought against the grip, wild with terror. The doorway began to tremble, light flickering as the shadows clawed at its edges. What could she do now? Infuriated despair twisted in her gut. She couldn't let them win. With one last surge of strength, she yelled, "Not if I can help it." As she too wrestled with uncertainty, the weight of her choices bore down heavily. Was this the moment to break free, or was it another snare? The darkness twisted around her as she felt the grip loosen, a terrifying choice barreling ahead. Would she find her children, or fall deeper into the darkness? In that fleeting moment, as hope flickered against a tide of despair, Helen knew there would be no going back, only the unknown awaited her. A jolt of fear coursed through Helen as she teetered on the edge of choice. The cold grip on her shoulder released just enough for her to escape, but not without consequence. The shadows quivered with anger, writhing like serpents desperate to reclaim their prize. She stumbled through the doorway, the blinding light engulfing her fully for a moment. Then, as the glow began to fade, horror sank in. She was not in the warm embrace of safety. Instead, she found herself in a dimly lit room, thick with dust and the taint of decay. The air smelled stale, overlaid with hints of something coppery. She looked around. The walls seemed to breathe with an eager anticipation, bearing witness to her every move. On a table, shattered photographs lay scattered, faded faces trapped in laughter, now distorted by time. A sense of dread washed over her, these had to be remnants of past victims, perhaps other mothers led astray by their own desperation. Helen's heart raced. "Mommy!" The voices echoed through the room, this time muted and lost. Panic surged within her. She pressed forward, the knife clutched tightly in one hand, searching for the source of the faint cries, but the air thickened with each hurried step. Behind her, the door slammed shut, the echo of wood against wood reverberating like a death knell. "Welcome home," the shadows whispered, that mockery seeping into her bones. She spun around, eyes wide, but there was nothing. Just the swirling darkness, closing in. "Ben! Sophie!" She cried, desperate for any sign of them, but the silence that met her made her stomach drop. She rushed to a window, flinging the curtains aside. Outside, the night swirled with an oppressive mist that clung to the glass like a foreboding shroud. Shapes danced in the distance, faint outlines of figures moving, skirting around the edges of her view. Her breath quickened. Were they children? Were they her children? "Mommy!" The voice rang in her ears as if a memory was clawing its way back. "Stay strong," she murmured to herself, fists clenched around the knife. But doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if it was a trap? A lure to draw her further into this nightmare? Suddenly, the walls closed in around her, pulsing as if the very structure of the room were alive, hungry for her fear. She could feel their eyes watching, waiting for her to falter. The pictures on the walls shifted, every smile twisting grotesquely, and she swore she could hear their laughter beneath the roar of her pounding heart. "Why are you hiding?" The malicious voice echoed, teasing, circling around her like a predator. Helen's pulse quickened. She sprinted through the room, seeking a way out, her breath coming in frightened gasps. On the far side, behind a rusted bookshelf, she noticed a sliver of movement. A shadow flitted behind it. "Mommy!" It was there again, Ben's voice, clearer this time, almost tangible. She rushed towards it, shoving the bookshelf aside. As she did, a blinding flash burst from within, illuminating a narrow passage leading deeper. Fear and hope tangled within her. She paused, a terrible realization washing over her. What if this led to them or to something far worse? The shadows thickened, a sense of urgency pressing in. She could feel the dark entity waiting, hungry to claim her. With a clenched jaw, Helen took a step into the light. "I'm coming!" She shouted defiantly, but behind her, a voice crooned, "You think you can save them? You're already lost." The passage loomed before her, dark but promising. The laughter echoed again, trill and mocking, tightening like a noose around her throat. What awaited her on the other side? With darkness lurking and choices dwindling, Helen moved forward, her heart racing with every breath. In that fleeting second, she realized this time, she couldn't afford to hesitate. But what waited at the end of the tunnel? Was there salvation for her children, or was she walking into the depths of despair? She stepped through the narrow passage, the light surrounding her flickering like a heartbeat. The air grew colder, sharper. Helen felt a chill crawl up her spine, urging her to turn back, but her desire to save Ben and Sophie fueled her steps. She moved deeper, the darkness whispering promises laced with malice. "Mommy!" The voice echoed again, close now. Her heart surged, beating in sync with her hurried breath. She pressed on, clutching the knife, the only defense against the terror that seemed to breathe just behind her. The walls shimmered as if they were alive, bending at odd angles, mocking her every advance. Ahead, the corridor widened, opening into a cavernous room lit by an eerie glow that illuminated grotesque shapes. Shadows danced like puppets, twisting and reaching out, taunting her with their contorted forms. And there, in the center, stood a woman with long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her back to Helen. "Ben! Sophie!" Helen shouted again, desperate, her voice trembling. The woman turned, her features obscured by shadows but unmistakably familiar. It was her, a twisted version of herself, eyes hollow, face drawn tight with a dreadful smile that cut deep into Helen's chest. "Why not come closer?" The doppelganger beckoned, voice dripping honeyed malice. "They've been waiting for you. What have you done to them?" Helen cried out, panic clawing at her throat. The shadows coiled around her ankles, pulling her back as though the very ground was alive with hungry hands. "Nothing that you wouldn't do to save them," the reflection of her own face replied, but there was no warmth, no compassion, just a chilling allure that sent waves of nausea crashing over her. "Join them, Helen. Or walk away. It's your choice." The wicked smile widened, revealing sharp, impossibly white teeth that seemed to glow with hunger. The shadows, her shadows, whispered around her, their cold fingers tugging at her mind, swirling memories of lost laughter, of bedtime stories, of innocent giggles. "No. I want tea." Helen felt a sudden surge of fury rise within her. "You want tea, take me." In a wild rush, she lunged forward, knife slashing through the suffocating darkness. But as she swung the blade, the image of herself flickered and dissipated like mist, reforming behind her in an instant, laughter echoing around her like thunder. "Keep trying, dear," the voice mocked with childlike glee. "After all, aren't you just another lost mother looking for her children?" A blinding light burst forth, blurring her vision. In the haze, faint outlines of small figures danced just beyond her reach. There. Ben and Sophie, their faces twisted with fear and confusion. "Mommy!" they cried, voices mingling with the malevolent laughter. "Help us! Hold on!" she screamed, her heart racing, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Helen charged toward them, but the shadows rushed forward, surging like a tide. "Give in!" their voices hissed, weaving through her mind like a noxious thread. "You cannot fight what you are." Helen shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, blurring her vision. She had to fight. She pushed forward, knife raised, desperation fueling every ounce of strength within her. Sudden silence fell, a stillness that held its breath. The laughter ceased, leaving only her pounding heart echoing in the void, and then she saw it, a door, slightly ajar, glowing with a warm, inviting light. Hope flared inside her. Was it freedom? "Don't you see?" The mocking voice drifted around her once more. "The light is just as deceptive." But it didn't matter. Helen took one desperate step forward. Escape was close enough to taste, but doubt crept in like a thief. Would she find her children beyond the light? Or would she lose herself to the shadows forever? The moment stretched, her decision pressed upon her like a heavy weight. "Make your choice, now," the shadows hissed, coiling tighter around her. As she reached for the door, the laughter returned, rising to a deafening crescendo, shattering her resolve. What awaited her on the other side? Would she step into salvation or darkness? With one foot hovering over the threshold, Helen hesitated for what felt like an eternity. There was no turning back now. What fate lay in wait, inviting her with open arms? Helen felt the warmth of the light tug at her. It was like a siren's call, beckoning her to step through. But the shadows whispered louder, their voice an unsettling symphony of mockery and despair. "Mommy, please," Ben and Sophie's voices chorused again, mingled with the sickening giggles of the darkness that held her captive. She could almost feel their tiny hands reaching for her, desperate to escape whatever evil surrounded them. "Stay back!" Helen screamed into the void, gripping the knife harder. The familiar weight of it felt suddenly reassuring, a sliver of reality in a place where nothing else made sense. "I'm coming for you. Just hold on." But the moment she spoke, the glowing door staggered, flickering ominously as if questioning her intent. Helen's breath quickened, the shadows around her thickened, swirling like a storm, as if they were alive, growing stronger with her fear. "Mommy, don't be afraid," a voice slithered from the darkness, more soothing than the others, almost comforting. "You can find peace with us." "No. No." Her pulse raced. The urge to run was mounting, yet she couldn't tear her eyes away from the door. Suddenly, it swung open with an unnatural creak. The light spilled out, illuminating the cavernous room in a soft glow that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat. Shadows receded momentarily, as though the very fabric of the darkness feared the light. "Come to me." Her warped reflection sang, spinning in the air like a doll on a string. "Free yourself from this pain, Helen. Just step through." Her heart hammered in her chest. The choice was suffocating her children or this twisted version of herself that held all the answers. I want my kids," she shouted, voice trembling with conviction. Yet a seed of doubt festered within. Would finding them mean succumbing to darkness or reveling in light? The reflection tilted its head, studying her. Such a selfish wish. Don't you want to know what could happen if you simply gave in? But what about Ben and Sophie? Only pain exists here, my dear. Only torment. They're waiting for you. Join them. Come here, to where you belong. The last words trailed off into an eerie echo that felt like an embrace. The shadows lunged, she could feel them like icy fingers clawing at her legs. Helen gritted her teeth, she refused to back down. She sprinted to the door, feeling an unseen force pulling her backward. A heavy weight settled in her chest as flashes of memories assaulted her, moments of laughing at dinner tables, bedtime stories, and summer days spent in the sun. It fueled her resolve. She surged forward, knife raised, ready to break through whatever barrier loomed. "No! No!" The voice screamed, panic bursting from the figure. "You can't leave. You belong to us." The shadows rushed in to engulf her, but just as they reached for her, the light from the door flared violently, pushing them back. "Mommy!" The familiar voices cried out from the light, clearer now. "We need you." Something inside her shifted. A choice had to be made. With every ounce of strength, she leaped toward the door, knife extending forward. She burst through the threshold, and in that split second, the world exploded around her. Light enveloped her like an embrace. But as Helen crossed the boundary, an ear-splitting screech pierced through the air. The darkness clawed at her, trying to hold her back. She pressed on, determined, but as she stumbled into the brilliant light, shadows twisted and curled, reaching out in desperation and rage. Everything went white. Then, silence. Helen's heart pounded in her ears. Where was the warmth of the light? Instead, she felt a frigid chill settle over her. "Ben? Sophie?" She called out, fear twisting in her gut. The cold pressed around her like a shroud, nearly suffocating. A voice echoed through the stillness, soft and barely a whisper. "You should have never left us, Mommy." And then the laughter began again, dark and cruel, echoing from all sides. What awaited her now in this chilling void? Would she find her children, or was this darkness only the beginning of her torment? Helen spun in place, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The laugh echoed cruelly, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. "Where are you?" she shouted, her voice wavering in the icy air. "Where are my kids?" The oppressive silence responded with nothing but her own frantic breaths, quick and panicky. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, darting away like frightened birds. With trembling hands, she clutched the knife, its cold steel oddly grounding. Where was the light? Why was it so cold here? "Mommy." The whisper was softer now, laced with sorrow. "Mommy, please, Ben." "Sophie." Desperation clawed at her throat. She strained to peer into the dark corners around her, shadows forming shapes that flickered and danced. Each movement was a taunt, each squeal of laughter a reminder of her failure. "Stop hiding. I will find you. Finding us one tea bring you peace." The voice twisted through the silence, sultry and dripping with malice. It toyed with her resolve, making her shiver. "We're not alone anymore. You left us in the light, and now we play in the dark. I didn't leave you. I came to save you." Helen stumbled forward, each step heavy with dread. Was this the darkness from which she had escaped? A place where her children had been trapped? Panic surged through her, hot and suffocating. She felt lost, cut off from reality and from them. The laughter swelled, maddeningly joyful, and for a moment, she thought she could hear their voices mingling with it. "Mommy, why don't you come play?" "Play? You think this is a game?" she shouted back, fury igniting her. "This isn't a game." But the shadows churned, pulsating with something sinister, as if they were alive. They flicked in closer, and panic prickled along her spine. What if they were real? What if they had woven themselves into the fabric of this emptiness? She felt the world shift beneath her. The ground began to tremble, and dark tendrils reached up, grasping for her ankles with cold fingers. "Mommy!" The voices called again, crying out as if reaching through a veil. "I'm coming!" She screamed, stumbling back, knife raised. "Just hold on." And then the air around her thickened, breath tight and suffocating. A flash of light flickered, and just for a moment, she felt warmth wash over her, a fleeting promise. Her heart raced, and she pushed against the encroaching darkness, moving towards the sound of those sweet, familiar voices. She had to break free. Suddenly, she was in a snarl of unease, shadows surging like a wave crashing upon her, trying to pull her back into their depths. "We can't let you leave." Driven by a primal instinct, Helen surged forward again, desperate to break free from their grasp. No! She wasn't losing them again. No! She roared, swinging the knife in panic, carving through the grasping shadows. "Mommy, please!" The chorus of her children echoed again, louder, more insistent. Then, abruptly, everything fell away. Silence returned, the laughter subdued, replaced by a heavy sense of foreboding. "Mommy?" Now the voice sounded so close, so real. In the distance, a flicker of light appeared. It shimmered like a beacon, a soft glow amidst the bleakness. A shadow, small and familiar, tugged at her heart. Was it them? With every ounce of resolve, Helen bolted towards the light, but as she ran, the ground beneath her twisted, warping and collapsing. Shadows cobbled together in her path, forming monstrous shapes that swirled with malice, eager to claim her. Just as she reached for the light, the darkness roared, a thunderous growl that resounded through her body, piercing deep into her bones. "Mommy!" The shadow of her child called again, but now it sounded distorted, as if it were being dragged back. "Don't! I'm coming!" She lunged forward, throwing herself into the radiance, but even as she fell toward it, the pull of the shadows was relentless. With a final, desperate gasp, Helen vanished into the light, but it was not the warmth she expected. Instead, a chilling presence enveloped her, the world refracted and twisted. "Welcome home," whispered the echo, fading as if swept away by a sudden gust. Did she find her children, or was this the last illusion before she fell into eternal darkness? The questions haunted her as she struggled inside the light, grasping at straws, ready to confront whatever awaited her next. The light consumed Helen, wrapping around her like a cocoon, but it felt cold, thick, suffocating. Panic surged as she flailed against the invisible walls, attempting to break free. The whispers surrounded her, a mix of her children's voices layered with sinister laughter, creating a discordant symphony that pierced her heart. "Mommy! Help us!" Sophie's voice echoed, clear and piercing. "We're here." Helen's heart dropped. "Where?" She called out, desperation spilling into her voice. "Where are you?" "Come play with us," they sang, the sweet innocence tainted by a chilling undertone that clawed at her sanity. In that moment, clarity spilled over her like cool water. The light wasn't a refuge, it wasn't salvation. The shadows had morphed into her mind's greatest fears, twisting around every hope she had of finding her children. She had to break this illusion. "Not this time!" she shouted, leaning into the sound of their voices. "I want to let you take me." The darkness rolled in waves, threatening to pull her down. The fear clawed at her like an angry beast, but she couldn't give in. After everything, the haunting despair of losing her children had fueled her fight. She had to believe they were still there somewhere within the maze of shadows waiting for her, so she fought with everything she had. One last time, she yelled, "Sophie! Ben! I love you!" And she plunged toward that flickering warmth. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony that tried to overwhelm her. Just as they rose to fever pitch, she broke through. The sensation was jarring, a sudden rush of air and light. Helen stumbled forward, collapsing onto cold, hard ground. She gasped, the chill biting into her skin. "Mommy?" She shot up, looking around. The room was dark, heavy with silence, the only source of light spilled from a flickering bulb overhead. The familiar sound of her children's voices caught in her throat. Could it be true? Desperately, she scrambled to her feet, scanning the shadows. "Ben! Sophie!" she cried, her voice echoing in the emptiness. "Mommy!" They were close, the voices emerging clearer now. She rushed forward, heart pounding. "Ben! Sophie!" She stumbled over to a nearby corner where a warm glow seemed to pulse, radiating familiar love. "Mommy!" Ben's startled giggle rang clear, and her heart sang as she took in the sight before her. There they were, standing together. Just as she had left them, Helen collapsed to her knees, arms outstretched, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank God! I thought I lost you both." The children rushed into her embrace, warmth enveloping her body as she held them tight. "I was so afraid," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. "I thought I couldn't save you. But you did." Sophie beamed, her innocent eyes sparkling with joy. A flicker of light danced around them, banishing the shadows that had once loomed like dark phantoms. "Let us go home now," Helen said, standing up, pulling them in close. Hand in hand, they walked back together, leaving behind the echoes of darkness. A sense of peace washed over Helen, a weight lifted. No longer were they just escapees from the darkness, they were stronger, united in love, triumphing over fear. They stepped into the warmth of the welcoming embrace of daylight, and beyond the confines of yesterday's horrors, a new horizon awaited them. They would be okay. As they exited the front door, Helen turned one last time, glancing back at the remnants of the nightmarish darkness, now fading. It felt distant, like a story told. "Let us never talk about the dark man again," she whispered as they walked into the future together, the door shut behind her with a quiet click, sealing away the shadows of their past and ushering in the brilliance of new beginnings, and in that moment, Helen knew they would always find their way back to each other, no matter how dark the night. Now, it's your moment to join us as we dive into other captivating tales. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next spine-tingling installment. Smash that like button now to show support and help us reach others who crave thrilling stories like this. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. What do you think Helen and the kids will do next? And please, instantly share this video with 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion, because every true fan knows the importance of supporting our channel. Don't wait even one more second to share.